right, we're going to talk about domain and range. Remember, you've been hearing these words for a long time. Domain is the x values and range are the y values. So in other words, when I go to determine domain, I'm going to be looking left and right. When I go to determine range, I'm looking up and down. So let's look at example 1. This is a picture of the graph of the square root of x plus 2. My domain, I want to look left to right, and I want to see where does it start. Well, it looks like it starts at -2 and goes on forever. So we say our domain goes from -2. I'm going to use a bracket because it actually touches -2, from -2 to infinity. Or another way to express this would be with an inequality. All the x's greater than or equal to -2. The range, on the other hand, is up and down. Up and down, it looks like it goes from 0 to infinity because the arrow there suggests on the right that it keeps creeping up slowly and gradually. So I'm going to say from 0 to infinity, it touches the 0, so it touches the x-axis there. So I'm going to say from 0 to infinity with a bracket around my 0. Or you could express it as an inequality and say all the y's greater than or equal to 0. On to example number 2, the domain. Well, it looks to me with those arrows that it keeps going right and it keeps going left, which means the domain is all real numbers. We could say all real numbers. We could also say -infinity to infinity. And when we do the range, we wouldn't say all real numbers because although it looks like it keeps going infinitely up, there's nothing happening down here. So we're going to say from 0 to infinity. I'm going to include 0 with a bracket because it does touch the x-axis. Or if we wanted to express it as an inequality, we'd say all of the y's greater than or equal to 0. This last one over here has some asymptotes, and if you look at it, remember how we determined vertical asymptote was to say, okay, what would make that denominator equal to 0? Well, 1 negative 1 plus 1 would give us 0, so it looks like we have a vertical asymptote at x equals -1. Right here. And we can see it has a horizontal asymptote at 0. So it appears that both graphs go infinitely right, infinitely left, infinitely up, and infinitely down. But they do have some spots where nothing's happening. So for the domain, we say all real numbers except at x equals -1. And for the range, we say all real numbers except at y equals 0.